I do. It's interesting. I probably played some bugle calls a while ago warming up that haven't been played here since the fort closed. Um, I can't see to read music anymore, but I can still remember bugle calls. And when I was in college, I was a bugle master. I graduated from the Citadel in 1969. It's a military college. I was in the band, and I was a bugler there, and everything we did was by bugle calls. In my senior year, I was responsible for all the calls, and I still remember all of them. This, I'll pause, this is a clarion. People say, oh, it's a bugle. Yeah, but it's called a clarion. It is the most common bugle used during the Civil War. You'll see pictures of them, to include one in the museum there. It's covered on one of the books. It's got a bugler on a horse. He's got up there. What he's playing is a British duty bugle. There is no record of British duty bugles ever being purchased by the United States during the Civil War. And people say, but you can go to antique shops. These are Civil War bugles. No, this is. And I found this in a pile of old junk bugles. And the guy that had them all beat up because he wanted to use them. He did reenacting on battlefields. He'd dump them all over the battlefield like they'd been damaged in the battle. And I found this one. It was flattened there. I took it to the horn doctor in Kansas City. They fixed it up. So what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to play it. So they fixed it so I can play it. And it's got a great sound. I love playing it. But keep in mind, I'm human. I might bobble a note. So, but I'll just play it again if need be. But the nice thing is when I do funerals, I may bobble them up, but I can keep on going. But if you got a recorder and it skips the tape or the tape breaks, guess what? It's done. So, but this is fun to play. Now, if it had a crook on it that would come out here and turn, and the mouthpiece going to the crook, it'd be B flat. Without the crook, and it didn't have a crook when I got it, it's in the key of C. So it's my exercise program for my lungs. The doctor says I have lungs of a teenager. So that's good. The commander gives the commands. But if he's here, and part of his soldiers are over by that corner of the wall, and part of them are about 100 yards on the other side of the wall there, and he's got a few over here, and he wants them back, he says, buglers sound recall. That's how his command can be sounded over a greater area, and the soldiers then know what they're supposed to do. In this case, they would come back. He's recalling them to come back to this position. So bugle calls are designed to echo the commander's commands. They also schedule the duty day for the soldier. If you're at a fort like Fort Wallace would have been, or Fort Larned, it's small enough that you have one duty bugler. But if you're in an encampment like, say, was here earlier, or maybe at Fort Hayes before the fort was built, you've got the 7th Cavalry, you've got several different troops. The main duty bugler would sound the first call, the bugler's call, and then the other buglers know that shortly they're going to be playing the next one. And reveille would have been the next call. Then they would have had fatigue call. Let's see. You've had sick call in there. recall, that means that's the end of the duty period or the class period, and then you'd have mess call for noon meal. But at some point in time in the morning, you've also had guard mount. Now, before I play it, how many of you ever watched the John Wayne trilogy? She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, Fort Apache, and I don't remember the third one. Have you ever seen those movies? And at the beginning, there's a cavalry trooper rides up, he puts a bugle up, and he plays a bugle call. Do you recall seeing that movie? Sure. Okay. The call he's playing is guard mount. Now, guard mount is when they change the guard and they're home for 24 hours. And so that would be in the morning. And before guard mount, you'd have had again first call. Then you'd have had adjutant's call. And because the adjutant's responsible for guard mount, and then you got guard mount, which they would march in and change the guard. Then in the evening, other calls you would play would have been retreat to the colors. That's when you lower the flag. Wait a minute here. You see I'm carrying a pistol. This was not the same period pistol that was carried here. Theirs would have been a cap and ball, although some of those were converted where they had an actual cartridge case. This is a replica of the 1873 Colt single action Army revolver. And it's a good one. It's fun to shoot. I have no ammunition with me, so you don't have to worry about me doing something stupid. I also have my saber because the bugler has got to be able to protect himself. But his primary duty is to echo the commander's commands by playing them on the bugle. Now, if you look at the picture of the 26th June 1867 at the museum, you'll notice Captain Barnett's, the 7th Cavalry behind him, and there's a bugler right there by him. That was the duty bugler for that day. His last name begins with B, and I can't recall right now his name, but I know it begins with B. But off to a little bit to Barnett's left, you can see the horses, basically kind of a light brown, but there's another white horse. And the bugler, the duty bugler, was on a white horse, and the other one was. And I presume that's supposed to be Charles Clarke because he was not the duty bugler that day, but he was there if he needed to echo the commands. If part of the command was here, part of it was over here, and the commander said recall or whatever, then he would play and the duty bugler would play. Or he's here to take over as a duty bugler if something happens to the duty bugler. Unfortunately, Clarke was killed by the Indians and then mutilated. So, but you'd have to get the, you can look at the article, or you can get the book on Fort Wallace. There's a series, Fort Scott, Fort Larned, Fort Harker, Fort Hayes, Fort Wallace. I think Fort Wallace is the fourth one that tells a little bit about that. Any questions? Now, I also could have carried a carbine, and I don't have it with me today. I'd have had this strap over my shoulder with a Spencer carbine hanging down to my side. Again, that's for defense if needed. The primary job of the bugler is to play the calls. Okay, tattoo. soldiers are being told is it's time to get ready for bed.
Oh.
And then the taps bugle call, there's two different ways it says this call came into existence, which you can find on the internet. There's only one true way, and there's a Union general that did not like the calls were being played. So he sat down and wrote taps. He gave it to his bugler. His bugler played it, and he made a slight adjustment to it, and that became taps. Well, then the other Union regiments or companies around this area, the next day came and asked the bugler what that was. He told them what they'd done. They said, we want the music. They wanted to play it, and then the Confederates hear it, and the Confederates start playing it. So that became the call they played for basically good night, lights out. Then at some point they decided to play it for funerals, and again, both the North and the South would play that for funerals. Now, at the National Cavalry competition last fall, the last call we had to play, and I was competing against a bugler from Fort Hood, Texas. He played taps one way, I played another way. And the judge told the audience they both played it correct. The way the guy at Fort Hood played it is like you'd play it for taps, lights out at night. The way I played it was like I did a while ago for a funeral, which is where I normally play it. Let's see if I can do it as I would for lights out.